honestly, I feel like half of the development of the game is about making it so that you're able to talk about these things in a way that is like has some baked in comedy to it. You know, like would an alien prefer a baguette or like a chili dog? And
I
it's
always
just,
go taco for my aliens because of the toughness.
there you go.
know.
That's good.
Aliens
So it's
are
like,
squishy. You got those little skinny legs.
Butterscotch Shenanigans.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 568 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the weekly podcast for indie game developers. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam, the miscellaneous programmer.
I'm Sam and I'm out here.
And we are Butterscotch Shenanigans. Today is April 10th, 2020. Quick! Listen.
No.
Listen. We got
Okay.
a release date for How Many Dudes. We're gonna talk about it. And if there's time, at the end, we'll talk about Ludo Kit a little bit. 'Cause some stuff has happened with that as well. So, pretty much what we want to talk about this whole episode is How Many Dudes. We'll talk about our own shit, our own game, and kind of the decisions we're making around it, and how production's going, and what our plans are. So,
But also, I think if for any dev who's thinking about release dates, we'll be dropping how we think about them. You know, given that we've released a couple games, but certainly not a lot.
yeah.
You know,
Now,
Fuck.
are we correct? We'll find out.
knows?
You know, but we'll talk
We'll
about
find
our
out.
ideas. Yeah, so we're planning on releasing How Many Dudes on Thursday, July 30th, at a price point of $14.99 on Steam. We'll probably be doing a launch discount of some kind, and we'll also be releasing on mobile at the same time on iOS and Android. But we haven't fully figured out
details of that we are
the shape of that.
finishing.
But we do, at least at the moment, plan on maintaining the demo. So we'll be updating the demo at launch with all the updates. But the demo will still be constrained to the same sort of set of dudes that it currently has.
Mhm.
But yeah,
it'll
so
be
let's talk
almost only the same content, but there might be some things that kind of squeak through the
about,
boundary.
some
that are
extra
gonna
like
come
meta
with-
systems and stuff like
yeah,
that.
but it'll be mostly
Um,
the same stuff, just the way it would be, the way that stuff would now be experienced in the full game,
Mhm.
rather than the old way it's being
The old
experienced
ways.
currently.
So we said that we would be aiming to release by end of June, which ended up being an interesting sort of pinch point. So I think we could still probably have the game pretty well done by that point. But that's the Steam summer sale. And we talked about that in the past where, we were like, should we launch into the summer sale? But the problem with launching into a summer sale or any big Steam sale, a store-wide sale like that, is the featuring spots are gone because the whole page is all about, the whole homepage is all about the event, right?
Yeah.
And
So
so,
comically,
Very
you know,
noisy space.
we were joking about how like this sounds like such a dumb idea that maybe it's a good idea. But the thing is, we did run it by. We were to make these decisions willy nilly, right?
we talked to a
few
lot of people.
publisher friends and stuff, and they were like, "That is a terrible idea, actually." For a
Actually,
version,
it's so dumb. It's just dumb. It just
Yeah,
stays
it's actually dumb.
It
Yeah.
doesn't
So
look
don't do
back
that.
around.
it's like that again. You could launch a demo. You could do a demo. Those are different. They're just like a different thing. It wouldn't
Because
behave the same.
demo is in the free to play category, right? It has
Yes.
its own dynamics. It's not
And it
going to get
was-
featured anyway.
Correct.
It was never going to be on the front page. It's
Yeah.
a demo.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt you to do a demo, which, we launched the demo in the winter sale, and I still stand by. I think that's probably like launching
I think it was a
demos
good move.
into sales is probably
great
not
move.
a bad move.
Great move.
And so, so we're also not planning on making a release date announcement trailer because we thought about it and we're like, who gives a shit? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
You
don't
just need
think
the
anybody
facts
does.
to be out there, right? And then like, yeah, you could try to use it as a news beat, quote unquote. But we've done this in the past. Like every game we've done in the past, we're like, okay, once you have a release date, you do the announcement thing with
Get
trailer,
everything synced
blah,
up
blah,
and
blah.
lined up. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, we could, right? Try
But who
to turn
gives a
that
shit?
into a beat. But who gives a shit? I would rather just put it up so we can like have all those details out. We'll just do like a press release, which takes no time at all comparatively. Do a Steam event thing to let everybody on Steam know. Probably do a little email. So no, we'll let people know, but it's not going to be like a whole fucking thing, trying to organize.
I think having a demo really changes the dynamics of it, right?
Yes,
because
it
like,
does.
when you don't have a demo, you're always trying to think like, how can I get people to like be hyped about the
Understand.
game and
Yeah.
understand what it is and how do I convey it? With the demo, if people are into it, then they're already in,
Mhm.
you know. And so we just we don't need to make a trailer, because if people want to check out what the game is like, they can literally just play it.
Go check it out.
It's
Not a
fine.
big deal. Mhm.
Yeah, and so and also the fact that our target wish lists coming in was 50,000 for launch, because we're like, this is a fast dev cycle game. I think it'll be something like 9 months or ish,
Yep.
start to finish.
Or start
And
to launch.
so
Start to
Yeah.
launch. Yeah.
yeah, and so we don't, we don't need to like break the bank with trying to like make tons and tons of high level trailers and cinematics and all this sort of stuff. It's like focus on the gameplay and just get people in there and having fun.
Yeah, but I think also that there's the nuance there for when because marketing people and PR people will be constantly telling you to do exactly the stuff, to do your release announcement trailer, to do basically trailers at every fucking second, right? It's a new trailer time, right? And to sync things up, because they want to have these press beats, these moments.
And it's
right?
true. You only get a couple of them, especially.
You only get a couple of them.
Yep.
But the question of, does anybody care? Does it matter if you do that, right? Because that can be, in general, the idea with all this kind of stuff is that the bigger splash you can make in one go, the more likely you are to catch modern algorithms, because modern algorithms are virality focused. That's they're all about ratcheting stuff, so that an extra 10% on top of an extra 20%, like all happening at once, it has this exponential kind of kickoff effect, right? So that's why you're trying to do that stuff. But you have to ask yourself, can that happen to me with my game anyway, right? And so if you're a big AAA game that everyone's really excited about, or if you're Blizzard and you have any kind of announcement or whatever, right? Then yeah, you can really leverage that stuff if you sync everything up and communicate it really carefully, right? If you're making a game that like no one's really paying attention to or even knows about, or just if you're in the indie category in general, that's not really what the dynamics are. That's more community driven kind of stuff. It's not likely you catch all those flywheels. It's not likely.
We're still gonna do, like, we're still gonna reach out to press, and we're still gonna try to, we're do all that stuff, but it's not, we're not making a massive synchronous set of events to try to, like, we're not having a big cinematic.
It's about overall effort, right? Because if we're gonna if you put in all that time and then get the payoff of like having that huge spike, right? Yeah, that was a good move, right? But if you're not likely to have that happen in that way, right? Or more importantly, I guess, if the difference between that happening and not doesn't really come down to whether you have a new trailer, right? Because that's the thing that I find hard to believe in a case like this is like, would us spending the time to make a new release announcement trailer be the thing that makes us go from, hey, our announcement didn't do anything, to, hey, our announcement did something? And I just don't believe that that's...
And we will have a new trailer closer to launch that actually shows, all the,
there will be
all
one
the new
final
stuff.
trailer.
Sure, but we don't necessarily think we need one at this point just to say what the launch date is. You know what I mean?
It's just a leverage thing. I think if it's a case that you haven't actually gotten any kind of marketing traction yet, then of course, like, your story is different, right? You might want to try doing it. And especially
trying to do it isn't a bad idea. It's about resource allocation.
And if you don't quite know how to present your game yet, then obviously it's all learning material, right, that you can use. I think probably our plan more so this time around is basically to, as we get closer to launch, we wrap up more of the content, make another batch of shorts, see which ones resonate really, really well, right? Use those again to make a launch trailer, like concept, right? And then that'll be that. So we don't have to do so many fucking trailers again, which is nice. Because one of the things we knew going into shorter dev cycle was like the total marketing and publishing part of a game is kind of fixed. Like the total amount of time to putting in to do these things, right? So as your dev cycle shortens, that time eats up a bigger chunk of the overall dev cycle.
Yeah.
Right?
If it takes you 6 months of marketing work to launch a game, and you want to make a game in 6 months, then do you market the whole time? Yes, right. But also, like, do you postpone the launch and tack another several months onto the end? Increase the dev time by 50% for the marketing, and there's arguments for that, because it's like, well, if you spend 6 months making a game and then you just fail to market it and nobody knows about it and it doesn't do anything, then what was the point of those 6 months, right?
Yes, I would say you definitely need to balance. It's all balance.
So we'll be doing some like Steam announcements and blog posts and we'll be getting all the information out there about the
Yeah.
release date and all that.
And I'll say the major things that we were considering when picking them, which is just a good note for if you're a dev and you're trying to figure out like, when should I launch something. One is again not during a full like Steam change up thing like a summer sale, where that especially those algorithmically driven like top capsule spots are not available. Don't do it during that time. And then otherwise, you basically stay outside of I don't know. In our case, we're like trying to give the summer sale, which happens up till July 9th, I think, or July 7th. Give that some breathing room. Stay away from Next Fest. You know, any of these things where it's like there's just kind of takeovers of things.
And when you're looking at your competitors, because you're also trying to figure out like what else is releasing, right? And there's sort of two parts to that. One is you never know for sure, because just like in this case, we didn't know the release date for How Many Dudes until a few months in advance, right? And so you never know for sure what's going to come out. You can always be surprised and have something kind of take all the wind out of your sails, right? But it's also true that most games don't really compete with each other in a meaningful way. What you're competing for is visibility, and so that's the thing you're trying to avoid launching when there's a game coming out that you know is going to be like full Steam takeover, like when Mugenics came out, right?
When Blueprints comes out.
Exactly.
Like
yeah. If you could help it. But like when Mugenics came out, full takeover of stuff, right?
And that was like an indie roguelike, right? So a lot of the people who we would want on the influencer side, so that's the big considerations. What are the influencers that you're going to be targeting going to be playing, right? Are they going to be already just busy for that day or 2 days or whatever?
Because there are some games that are more direct, like Eugenics is like more directly kind of in competition with something like How Many Dudes, right? So you're trying to avoid that kind of stuff, but you also don't need to be too like you need to be thinking about the visibility on Steam, not is this a big game that's releasing in comparison to right? Because Steam tries to show lots of games all the time unless a game is doing a full Steam takeover, right? And so if you're the number 2 game instead of the number 3 game or whatever, right? Like, does it make a difference? Hard to say, right? So you probably don't have to worry about that as much. And then I think the last bit is day of the week, right?
Yes.
Which recommendations for that, depending on who you talk to, kind of vary. There's a lot of nuance there, a lot of uncertainty there. The rationale we've always used, and at least every publisher we've talked to seems to agree, makes sense as a strategy. And usually what people do is go for later in the week rather than earlier in the week, because it increases the likelihood of you getting to stick on top of charts over the weekend when no new stuff is coming out, because people don't really launch games on a weekend, right? Because the thing you're trying to avoid is Steam does a lot of good stuff for a game that's just coming out.
Yes, you do get one shot at that part. Right?
Yeah, you get one shot at that
trending, part. Top sellers for that like chunk of time, right?
Yeah, and you don't want to launch on a Monday, have 10 new games come out between that and the weekend, and now those get prioritized by Steam because they're newer, right? So whatever. So the idea is like launch later in the week, but we personally don't want to launch on a Friday because that seems too risky. We want an extra day.
Just in case.
Manage stuff and take care of things, you know. So that's
and you don't want to launch it on Wednesday because
that feels wrong. Feels bad.
Feel wrong.
We thought about it. We were looking at the calendar, and all of us were like,
"No,
we don't even have a rationale for why that's bad."
I think we have always launched on Thursdays. I think I'm pretty sure
part of it too.
Yeah, but I think like we can all agree that like Wednesdays just shouldn't exist.
It's not a good day.
What's it even doing there? There should be there should be Monday, Tuesday are work days. Wednesday should be the weekend. You know, and then Thursday, Friday you work, and then Saturday, Sunday is also the second weekend.
Agreed.
You know what I mean? That's how it should work.
Hobbit style.
Yeah, but it doesn't work like that, and so for some reason we have to deal with Wednesdays existing. So we're not going to launch on Wednesday.
No.
So just try to dodge and juke around all the big stuff that might derail your game, and just find a nice place to slot into. And so and we also were looking at in terms of our timelines, because the other decision point is like, how much time do you need to finish the game? And there's a certain set of things that we can estimate internally in terms of looking at the content we want to develop and the things we want to do, make sure we give ourselves time to balance stuff well and just play the game a lot. And then otherwise make sure that then there's sequential things in there like localization, where it's like we have to get stuff done, then send it off to translation, and then go through QA and all that. And that's just something that happens further in.
there.
Yeah, once you have enough text to deal with. But,
Yeah.
but part of it too is trying to decide, is there some way we can like tweak our order of operations so that we can kick a batch off to localization earlier than we otherwise would have, so that most of it's already done, so that the final round is really small, which is like for Crescents 2, we did a lot of that because that game had so much text that had to be translated. And also that lets you go through the cycle a few times before you release, because it's a hairy process trying to get all the
But honestly,
stuff.
I mean, how many dudes is probably going to end up with like 20,000 words? I mean,
Yeah, it's gonna be.
There's which
It's a lot.
yeah, let's talk about it a little bit about like what's in the game. You know, what's our actual
Yeah, what's
kinda
for the 1.0?
scope?
Yeah,
What's the scope gonna-
what's between what people have played in the demo
Yeah.
and what we're going to release? Yeah, what's the
So
difference?
So first the demo. So the demo has 17 types of dudes in it, spanning 3 families, dude families, which is just like a categories of dude, right? So in the demo we have the warrior dudes, the undead dudes, and the fantasy dudes. There's 7 warriors, 5 undead, and 5 fantasy. So in total in the demo then, and this is something that, you know, that kind of comes up every now and then when people play a demo and they're like, yeah, it's cool, but like I felt like I had seen a lot of the game, you know, by the time I had done a few runs.
The big
Which
demo.
is true. And there's
Yeah,
still tons of variation there, but yeah, once you feel like you've seen all of the dudes, it kind of feels like, even though there's still a lot of experience left, it kind of feels like you've seen the game.
Right. And so when you play with a team of 5 dudes, which means, you know, you can, after 3 runs, you could theoretically have, you know, played with 15 out of 17 of the available dudes. There is, with that many, so, you know, 17 dudes, teams of 5, there's just under, it's like 7,000 team combinations that you could make. But, you know, that's, when there's 17 and you've like seen a lot of it by the time you get through it, then after a few hours, you're like, yeah, okay,
I get it.
I'm satisfied. I feel like
Well,
I've explored the space, you know?
Yeah, it's also a small enough pool that it feels like you can, like, it feels like people pretty quickly latch on to like, ooh, I really like this dude, or ooh, I really hate this dude. And those, like, they very quickly identify a handful of those, but that handful is kind of just a huge fraction of the overall set already, right?
Yeah.
And so people kind of get locked in really quickly to, which I think increases the sense that
That they've
you've already
explored the
seen
space,
a lot.
you know?
Yeah. And
Yeah,
when,
and
when
people-
you've got 42 dudes to choose from, right?
Which
then-
is that's our full launch number is 42.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so with 42 dudes, so we have in the full game we have 6 dude families, and each family has 7 dudes in it. So to answer the question, how many dudes? 42. That's how
42
many.
dudes.
There you go.
And so we've added the sci-fi family. We added the employed family, which is like working dudes. And then we've added the action family, which is kind of like loosely tied to like action movies, basically.
Yeah, it's sort of like
tropes from action movies.
Yeah.
But also we have a caveman in there just because we really wanted to have a caveman and we didn't have anywhere else to put him. So
It fits. It's loose.
yeah. So with 42 dudes, that does a couple of interesting things. One is it blows out the feeling of the scale of the game.
It blows out the dude space.
And
The dude space is
the dude space
huge.
is so fucking big. So if you imagine like this, where it's like when you play through the game normal mode, you have the flyer choices, right? Each time the flyers come up, you choose one of 3 different dude types to post. So previously in the demo, you could play through 3 runs and have played with all the dudes, right? This time around, after 3 runs, there's a very good chance that you haven't even seen the flyers for all of the dudes, let alone played with them. But also we have then like tons of new weird dudes that behave very oddly, and they do kind of weird things that I'm really interested to see how people figure out what kinds of crazy shit they can do with it.
The cross synergies and stuff have just, the game is just, it has
Well, then
gotten more and more fun the more dudes that we've
Yeah.
added it. Right?
and then it's part of the nice thing about having that significantly larger number is when you have a smaller number, it feels like really any 2 dudes should be able to more or less go together, because otherwise you don't really have choices you get to make, you know. But once you get a large enough number, you can get some pretty esoteric stuff that is, and also you can have some dudes where you're like, I think most people won't get this the first time they see it, or they'll use it badly the first time they see it. But
which already happens with some of the
which
demo
already happens,
dudes,
yeah, absolutely.
you know,
But we can play more in the space of getting really weird, where everything still is designed to ultimately be really good in many scenarios and be like particularly good in some scenarios. But it can be less obvious how to get there because you got choices now. So many choices.
Yeah, so in total then, with 42 types of dudes, that means 850,000 possible team combinations that you could make, up from 7,000, right? So
you think about like the 1.0 is basically more than 137 times larger in dude space.
In play
the
space.
demos.
And that's just for the dude space part.
Yes.
And I do want to talk
more.
about, so kind of to what Adam was saying, like the types of things that we can do with some of these new dudes. So think about like the demo dudes are just kind of like, they're largely the more straightforward dudes. You know, it's like Spartan, he blocks. You know, ninja, he throws shurikens, right? And we do have a bunch of those types of dudes that we brought in as well, new stuff.
Like
so
cave,
we'd be like,
cave
dude. Yeah, he unga, then he bunga.
Yeah,
you know, unga bunga.
Obviously.
That's his whole thing. Or we have like the construction dude, who is a new tank type dude in the employed family, and he chucks hammers. Like he taunts things by throwing hammers at enemies, and it's pretty straightforward. And then like he's got a lunch pail relic that he goes on lunch break to heal himself with, you know, stuff like that. So there's some dudes that are pretty obvious what they do right out of the gate, and then they do that in like a little bit of different interesting ways, but they're pretty self-contained and you can mix them with lots of things. But then we got dudes like the Lich. Okay, so we just added the Lich as the final undead dude, and he's a tank, but he's like a reverse paladin. So what he does is he enthralls the dudes below him on the roster, and then he transfers a large portion of the damage he takes into those dudes.
Which you might now being like, that sounds bad, right?
That sounds bad. That's going to kill those dudes. However, if that damage, and then the damage is delivered in pulses, so you can see it on the health bars where kind of like it pools the damage into those dudes, and you see this like black creeping up in their health bar, and then every couple of seconds the damage hits them. So they kind of like they build up the damage and then they get hit in these waves. If that damage kills those dudes, then instead of dying, they get sort of revived back to half health and they become a revenant, where now they're stronger. And so the Lich basically like buffs the dude below him over time by repeatedly killing him, and he uses the dude below him so that he can tank,
which then sounds super powerful, right? Until you realize that the Lich is constantly like doing damage that doesn't yet kill the dude, right? While that dude is being attacked by wild animals, right? And so if a wild animal is the one that deals the final blow, you're not resurrecting that guy because the Lich didn't kill him, right? And so and that's why like hearing Samus is trying to balance this to give you a space in there where like if there's a feasible way that can work well, where it's not just turbo overpowered or where it does nothing because your dudes always get killed by other stuff first, right? Is really interesting. And yeah, so to that point of like you can get into this really weird niche stuff that we still have to make sure it works. So like we still have to figure it out, right? But it can be very strange.
And we got like the alien dude that tractor beams dudes around, and we also have so kind of like how the Lich kind of tanks through another dude. We have several dudes that work like via sort of tapping into what other dudes are doing. So like we have the time dude, where he's kind of a Doc Brown.
I think the manager is probably the easiest one to like. It's the simplest to comprehend.
So the manager dude, he's got his ability is called micromanage.
And he's part of the employed dudes family.
Yeah. Right? He's got the old like hair only on the sides of his head thing. You know,
kind of a Dilbert cartoon. Basically.
He's got his like employee badge. You know, just a middle-aged middle manager kind of guy. And so he at the start of the battle he chooses a bunch of dudes that he designates as his interns. Okay. And then what he does is he picks a target and he duplicates a portion of the damage his interns deal, and he delivers it to the target that he chooses. So he kind of like takes enemies off the board by pooling damage from other dudes and putting it somewhere else. And then over time he like buffs those dudes in different ways and stuff like this. So he himself just doesn't, like, his stats kind of don't matter. He just needs to be alive, and he needs to, and your team needs to be doing good damage, right? And so like people figuring out how to use these dudes is going to be really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be like we're playtesting the ever living shit out of this game, right? And
I just found that I have over 450 hours played on my tablet.
Just on your phone. Yeah. And our QA team is constantly testing it, right?
Yeah.
And so this game is being tested, to the moon and back, right? But
there's
with
no way.
800,000 combinations of dudes and the other stuff we didn't even talk about yet, the common control space is so large, and not even just that. It's not just that what you have is so variable. It's the order in which it occurs, and then just random luck, right? Makes it so that there are going to be some scenarios at launch that if the game goes really well and we've got
that's just broken,
fingers crossed, a million players, right? That's good. There's gonna be some edge cases that get really interesting of just full ass broken kind of
but
builds,
also like because so think of, the way we're trying to think about it is like, all right, so in League of Legends, if a particular hero or champion or whatever the fuck they're called, character, if a particular character is insanely overpowered, it breaks the game because everybody plays that character and then wins, right?
Yeah, because it's multiplayer, right? So.
Yeah, it's multiplayer. So in How Many Dudes, though, the larger scope of the game is like, it's all about sort of completing the set. Getting gold stars on every dude with every relic, and that's how you kind of progress through the meta system. Which means like if somebody finds a particular dude combination that works really, really well together in a way that we didn't anticipate, that might be fine.
It's
because
cool.
Because there's still 40 other dudes that you gotta
But it's also with, right? I think it's one of the things that's also great about the roguelike genre, right? Is that you're allowed to have broken experiences, broken in your favor or against you, right? Either way, you're allowed to have broken experiences, because then you restart and you don't go right back into that experience, right? You go into a new random experience that now might not be broken this time. And so some of the most fun stuff that happens to you over a whole, hobby of playing a particular game is those moments where you stumble upon the broken magic combination and get all the way to the end and just crush it. And it's so easy. And then
it
would never happen again. Once. Yeah, it never happens again. It's part of the fun. It's part of the exciting part of it. So that's also sort of the fun secret about trying to balance this stuff, is it has to mostly be balanced. Like, so it can't be that every run or even close to every run is like that, broken in either direction, right? So that also has to work, but it is okay if some stuff slips through the cracks.
Yeah. And I will say as far as like systems then that players are already familiar with from the demo, then that's kind of like the current set, right? We already have the dudes, everyone's familiar with that. It's just more, right? More synergies, more interesting stuff going on. But then on top of that, we have the tier system. So right now, the current demo you could consider as tier 1 in difficulty. Once you gold star dudes in tier 1, then you could take them up to tier 2. And the challenge increases, right? There's some more economic squeeze. We introduce stuff in tier 3, tier 1, 2, and 3 are all 3 of them, where there's like an enrage timer that happens at a certain point. So you have to start focusing. You can't just like only take clerics. You know what I mean? Like at some point your damage has to be high enough, otherwise your team's going to get wrecked. And we do all sorts of funny stuff in those, like just to twist the mechanics a little bit so that the whole thing gets a little tighter. So strategically, you have to be really making good choices, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of an extension of the current one. Yeah.
Yeah. And like one of the big mediators of difficulty that's kind of invisible if you're a player is that in the current demo and in tier 1 in the full game, you've got a pretty high chance to find random consumables after every round. And even if your team is kind of bad, those consumables can get you through some tight spots, right? Yeah. And so as you go up in the tiers, those consumables get much harder to get. Like they get more expensive, and they appear like the random ones that you can find appear far less often. And so you do have to kind of be a lot more strategic about what your team is and kind of understanding how the dudes work together in order to not have to rely on the consumables to carry you, right? So Yeah, and then as far as the tiers go, we have the goat as the boss fight in the demo. So our plan is to have
the G.O.A.T.
the greatest of all
the
time.
goatest of all time / greatest of all time goat, however you
Yeah.
want to call it.
And so in tier 2, you'll have to face the goat. And actually, currently in the full game, the goat is on round 105, and we've moved the silver star to round 80. So if you beat round 80, you get the silver star, and then you have to beat the final boss of that tier to get the gold star. So in tier 1, it's the goat at 105. And then in tier 2, there'd be some new boss at 110. So you'll still have to beat the goat. And then you go 5 more rounds and then beat whatever the next boss is. And then in tier 3, it's round 115. So you have to beat the goat, then the next boss 5 rounds later, and then 5 rounds later, the final boss of tier 3.
It's very intense. Those tier 3 runs are
it gets up there.
sweaty.
And of course there are certain combos that are going to have a much easier time, with those end bosses depending on their damage profile or how they heal or that kind of thing.
But also, speaking of the balance challenge, I can't remember which one it was, but there was a dude stuff that I think it was just last week that Seth had wrapped up a new dude and was playtesting it and went to go fight the goat, and literally it took 1 second to kill the goat, something like that. Like it was just
it was the mummy.
The mummy,
So
turned into a trivial experience, and so again, this
the
kind of
goat
stuff where it's
died in a tenth of a second. Like I started the match and goat was gone, and I was like, "What is this?
What?
Did the goat?" Yep. So got that one fixed up because that's, I would argue,
too fast.
a little bit too overpowered. And then we've also one of our big focal points for development of the game is like we want to strike the balance between player agency of like making decisions about what your team is going to be and kind of how that works, and then also still making it so that if you replay with the same team a bunch of times, they have different experience each time. So
this is all the new stuff, like the really new stuff is in this category.
Yeah.
New systems.
So one of the things that always comes up in the demo is people are like, I just want to be able to just pick my team and just run with my team. And in the demo, I think we correctly said like, that kind of takes a lot of the fun out of it because there's only
enough texture within any given run to like meaningfully change. If you ran the same dude comp, it changes a little bit, but not enough.
Yeah, if you get exactly the same dudes, the run kind of goes the same way in the demo. So with all the new stuff that we've added, that's no longer the case. Like you can run with the same dudes and have a pretty different outcome. And so we are adding this ensemble mode, which in the full game, which is something that you'll unlock after just a little bit of playtime. And the ensemble mode is you essentially just pre-post flyers for dudes that you have discovered. So dudes that you've already played with at least once. And those flyers are posted at the start of your run, and you don't have to post a whole team, so you can just like post 2 flyers. So your first 2 flyers are now accounted for, and by the time you get to where
will randomly give the other ones.
Yeah, so by the time you get to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th flyer during your run, that just happens normally. But that way, if there's like a certain dude that you really want to get a gold star on, or if there's a combination of dudes that you want to run with, you can pre-post those few and then start with that. And then over time, you'll unlock more flyer slots for the ensemble mode. So you'll start with being able to post 2 flyers, and then by the time you get further into, I think it's like tier 3, you'll have the ability to fully just post a pre-made team of 5 dudes. And it is kind of interestingly self-balancing because of how the relic distribution works, which is kind of in the weeds, but basically just means like by pre-choosing all 5 dudes, you're going to get hit by the RNG harder a little bit because the total
pool of stuff is much higher at the beginning.
Is much higher right off the bat. So we're pretty excited about that, and with the fact that there's 42 dudes, like having a system like this is necessary because if you're like, wow, I really need to get gold on the manager dude. Yeah, and then you just don't see him on a flyer for 15 runs because there's a lot of dudes, right? So we needed something like this anyway, and so we're pretty pumped about it. And honestly, like now that it's been in there for quite a while, when we first added it, all I did was play ensemble mode because I was like, ooh, let me try this, you know. But I found myself ending up just going back to the classic mode of just the random flyers, just because like it is still more fun to just kind of have the chaos if you're not trying to do something really specific and you just want to vibe, you know.
It's one of those funky ones where it's like it's a toy aspect of it that you kind of need to offload what players naturally want to do, which is like as they come up with ideas for stuff. Oh, I want to try these.
Yeah, they want to explore space more intentionally.
With more intentionally, yeah. But usually they tend to come like once they've explored the space, they're like, oh yeah, I've been playing classic though. So you know it kind of works out both ways.
Yeah, and so then in terms of like adding to the second part of adding more variety within a run, so that even if you post the same 5 flyers right off the bat and then you play 10 runs, how does that change? So in the live game we have the business dude, the scavenger dude, and the merchant dude as sort of like,
and the dude whisperer for training,
and the dude whisperer, yeah. So there's these 4 dudes that show up in your ranch. These traveling dudes that offer different benefits, right? But the amount of randomness in those is pretty constrained. It's
constrained to the existing systems in terms of you just get more relics or less relics, more dudes or less dudes.
Yeah, right. And so we've added then the big thing that we're adding is this trinket system, which is you can kind of think about trinkets like relics in the sense that they're just an item that empowers a dude type. But the difference between a trinket and a relic is that you choose which dude type to attach the trinket to. So we just use the term trinket because it's just, you know, originally it was equipment, but it's just a thing that you can attach to a dude type. So we have stuff like therapy as a trinket, and therapy means like the healthier you are, the higher your toughness is. Just like real life. Or ADHD, where the dude just constantly zips around the field going to the farthest enemy from him every few seconds. So he just keeps like around. Now, there's some dudes where that's actually a super useful thing to have. Not necessarily for everybody. We got some stuff like the baseball bat, where every now and then the dude just whacks every enemy around him and guarantees a crit. So it's just like all these weird things. We got cut off jorts, we got tasers, you know, just tons of different things.
Basically, it ends up having these, and similar to how the current discussion works with the game, where people are like, oh, should I take wizard dudes, or should I get like generals in here? It adds this whole other layer where now you're like, yeah, but should my generals get therapy, or should I give them ADHD? And you start having these hilarious conversations, like just they're very fun to talk about, right? Yep. And it adds then this really intense layer of these pure player agency synergies, right? Where you could say, okay, well, based on how like this particular comp works, if I could get more crits happening on this guy who normally can't crit very much for whatever reason, then I can leverage that to do this other thing. And so you start making these really nice like team matchups and stuff. And that's where you get to the space where suddenly you can have things that feel like completely zanily overpowered, or where you're like, ooh, I'm building up to some like pinnacle, you know, Dude Goldberg machine, as we call it, which is like just this perpetual motion machine of doom that these dudes are putting out. It's really, really fun.
Yeah, and that's so much of the idea of the full game, right? Is to, because the demo is very much RNG focused, right?
Yes.
There aren't that many decisions you can make, and the decisions you're making, they have a big impact, but they don't. It's like
they're not different.
You're deciding about risk. Is what you're doing all the time, right? It's like, do I spend this money now or do I hold on to it, kind of stuff, right? And what we wanted to make sure was true in the full game is that it felt like you just had a lot more agency of decisions you were making that were just really interesting, right?
Well, to make it so that the per run texture is there, right? Where it's like if you ran the same comp multiple times, that you could get some hilariously different combinations, or even the same comp but you reorganized dudes, you know, like all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of where that trinket system comes in, and it's been really, really fun.
I was trying to find that balance for a roguelike of the thing that makes them fun is a huge amount of randomness, right? But you need some agency in there. But if you have too much agency, even though it always feels like you need more agency and want more, but at some point that guarantees a worse experience.
Fun.
And so trying to thread that needle this whole time of like, how do we give enough agency without taking away from what makes the game fundamentally what it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got
Well,
the trinket system.
and constraining that through RNG is like it's what actually makes things not be overwhelming, and it's something that was kind of like before we had the ensemble system, we had this idea of gold and silver flyers. So the idea was like you would, if you got silver for a dude, then at the time it was like your fourth flyer of a run, you could just click on a little like silver flyer button, and it would pull open like a grid of all the dudes that you've gotten at least silver on, and then you could just manually choose one of those instead of one of the flyer options. And that it's interesting because it on the face of it doesn't really sound any different than ensemble mode, because ensemble is like, yeah, just pick your dudes, right?
Yeah, but now you're picking them with full
Midstream.
context of
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah. So you've already posted a few flyers. You don't yet have your full team, and you have some relics now already, and some stuff is already going on. And then now you're trying to choose a dude based on these other things that have already happened, and then it's like, you know,
you have a lot
your
to
brain
choose
gets
from.
scrambled. Yeah. And so
because that's the thing too is you don't want to be met with a choice between a huge number of things in the middle of
a run. Yeah. And so it's basically pre-deciding some more cognitively heavy things is fine before the run starts. But once you're in the run, we need to lock down the number of things you need to choose between at any given time to know more than 3 things.
Yeah, you want lots of small choices so that you don't have a high cognitive load every time it happens.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so the trinkets are definitely one of the higher cognitive load things, because it's like for each of the 20 round bosses you beat, that's when you get a trinket. And you'll get a choice of 3 trinkets, just like how the relics work. But then it's the combination of you got these 3 trinkets to choose from, or you can re-roll them, right? And then which trinket do I choose, and which dude do I put it on? So now already there's a 5 dude, 3 trinket, combinatorial question.
Yeah, that's where it's like
it's already pretty heavy, actually.
And you're just like,
you pause. You're like, what should I? And you could sit there for like sometimes like 5 minutes where you're like, what should I really do?
Do I roll? Yeah, let me. But also, like we set up so you could pretty easily just tap on any dude and inspect his stats and kind of like make
it's
all the information is
it's
there.
all clean,
But it does kind of. That's about as far as we were willing to go in terms of like putting the player into a situation where they have to like really kind of make a more complicated decision. But then we also have something that's kind of similar to that. Which is the food dude. Not to be confused with the chef dude, which is a different dude that you can have on your team. The food dude comes and visits your ranch twice during a run, and he's got some meals available. He's got a menu, and you can choose one of 3, and then you choose which dude type is going to eat the meal. And the meals they're just stats. They're just a stat boost, right? But you might have one that's like, okay, this one gives, 20% max HP and 5% crit. This other one gives attack speed and run speed. This other one gives deflection. Like they
and
have,
again, so we use actual food for them. So you still have this hilarious conversation where you're like, should I give my wizards a chili dog or a pretzel? And like the whole, like, honestly, I feel like half of the development of the game is about making it so that you're able to talk about these things in a way that is like has some baked in comedy to it. Like would an alien prefer a baguette or like a chili dog? And
I always go taco for my aliens because of the toughness.
There you go. That's good.
Aliens
So it's
are
like,
squishy. You got those little skinny legs.
And if your alien's already got a face tattoo or ADHD, how does that impact which food you're going to give them?
Yeah, then you probably don't want pretzel. You probably actually want to go with like some red curry, So it's like you start having these just insane. It's just so fun. It's like, and every time the combo, again, the goal was to, from the demo to 1.0, was just add that per run texture in there. So it's like you just each time it's just a very good time. And we still have one system left there, which is the promoter dude.
Well, two actually, the smuggler and the promoter.
Yeah, so the smugglers, I think it's more in line with like how the demo systems work. In terms of like it's just an enhancement based on top. But the smuggler basically says, given that the full scope of the game has 6 families, and you could only possibly have 5 of those families represented in your
dude families.
Yeah, in your roster for any given run. The smuggler says any dude family who's not represented You pay me some money, and I will bring you one of their relics. So you don't have to have one of those dudes on staff. And so you pay him. He brings back a selection of relics to choose from, which means you can get access to essentially, relics that you normally wouldn't have access to in a given run. So again, per texture or per run texture, right?
Yep.
And that works pretty good. But that's like the closest, just like enhancement to the base system, right? That players already kind of feel.
Yeah.
And then the promoter is the last one, and the promoter basically offers you a wager. So, can you defeat this far more challenging round? If you do, or like no matter what, win or lose, I will heal your dudes back up to wherever they were before.
So you can lose the fight
and not lose the game.
You just can keep going in your run.
Yeah. And the reward
it's the underground match. It's like a separate side.
It's like a cage fight sort of vibe. And the reward is currently more relics, right? So just more stuff to choose. And that's kind of the final thing we're going to be fiddling with, is to figure out if there's some additional mechanism there so we can do a little more texture on
some different kind of thing, right?
Different kind of thing,
yeah. We're kind of leaning toward is basically creating a pool of 8 relics, or maybe even more, that only belong to the promoter dude. And they're going to be pretty beefy. And so kind of the only way to get them is to fight the promoter. And honestly, like one of the reasons for these kinds of things as well is, so you have to pay an entry fee to do the underground match of some dude bucks, some dollars, right? And so one of the tough things that we've been trying to balance in the full game compared to the demo is we want the business dude to be not
just the strategy.
Because the strategy of the demo right now is spend literally no money,
and have fewer relics at the beginning, which is just not interesting.
Right, and then just buy everything at the end, right? And so
which is also not interesting.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of adjustments that we're making where we're still not quite there, I feel, but we're getting
close,
there. Which is like we want to provide you with more interesting things that you really want to spend money on throughout the run instead of just never spending money.
And unlike relics, right? Because relics, like, you basically get to keep buying, right?
Yeah, these are things.
But having these other kinds of things, it's just gone.
Yeah. And so part of that is as well as just kind of like bumping up the difficulty of things later in the game, so that if you've been sacrificing relics and not buying anything, then you're gonna.
You feel it at some point.
Yeah. Because it's like, should the game be balanced around you being able to always win everything, regardless of how strong your dudes are? Probably not, right? You should need to have be empowering your dudes throughout the run. So we still want the business dude to be important, and if you really want to go far in the end game, you're going to have to use the business dude to some degree, but. That shouldn't be
the only strategy at this point.
The only strategy. Just ignore everything, spend no money, maximize business dude.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about this is that, we basically were trying to address most of the things that we saw in terms of player feedback from the demo, which is making it so that each run, given the runs are kind of long, it's 100 rounds before you hit the end game, 105 for a cold start at this point. Given that they're a bit longer, increasing the density of those decisions that you're making and which ones are interesting has made it so that the per run enjoyment is definitely just higher than it used to be, right? So it's there's just more interesting stuff going on the whole time, as opposed to having typically before in the demo, there's kind of some often point where you have a kind of middling experience for a little bit where you're I'm just kind of going, fugue state, but nothing particularly interesting is happening.
Just always pick the challenge fight on the right and just win every time, and then
so now at a minimum, there's a number of these points where you pause and you're what should I be doing? So it's a lot more interesting, I think, overall. But
and so then in terms of what do we have left to do, so we have essentially 3.5 months between now and launch. So all 42 dudes are in as of last night. And now it's a matter of balance and polish and visual effects and all those and sound. We're gonna have different music for each act. So right now the terrain changes, but nothing else changes as you progress through. And so we're getting new soundtrack, new music for all those things. We've got lots of UI polish to do. We got localization. Like I said before, we got to get those boss fights in. We also plan on adding new enemies as you go up through the tiers. So there'll be new things to see and fight, because not only do we want the tiers to be numerically more challenging, where it's like we use this like difficulty score calculation where every enemy has a score associated with it. As you progress through the rounds, we sort of use that as a budget to decide, what you're going to fight and how many of them you're going to fight. But I think we can all agree, like fighting honey badgers on round 45 feels very different than fighting goats on round 45, right? Because honey badgers are balanced in such a way where they're a lot more offensive than defensive, so they're pretty good at taking down your dudes, and they're kind of harder to deal with.
Our goal is that we want to add at least probably like 5 new enemies in the base tier, and then at least like 5 more in each tier. So there's just more as you climb through those tiers. The game itself changes shape a little bit.
Yeah,
maybe some new bosses. I don't know. We'll kind of figure out how far we can push it.
Yeah, you get into that late game in tier 1, and you're like, well, this is pretty tough, but at least I don't have to deal with Meese. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got all that stuff going on, and then of course we also need to just get achievements and some of the other sorts of like metagame things. But yeah, I mean, to me, kind of the biggest thing is just going to be the balance, like just these constant iterations of making sure that every dude has something fun and interesting going on, and ways that you can really make that dude shine and in certain scenarios, and not feel like that it's kind of like a dude that you just have to deal with, So like one example of that is the zombie, which in the demo people are like, I don't really like the zombie that much. Like he explodes, and he's got a bunch of interesting things going on, but none of them really work together that well. And so in the full game, we made a bunch of updates to the zombie where we actually built the zombie around exploding, like that he's supposed to explode and die, because we changed the willing flesh relic, which previously just made the zombie skeleton come out of his body when he died. Now the willing flesh relic is whenever a zombie gets knocked out, there's a 5% chance that every zombie comes back. Yeah. So
you think you would mean
undead horde kind of thing.
It would think you mean you can't lose, but speaking from experience, we had 40 of them, you still could lose.
5% is sounds high until you realize that it's a 95% chance that it doesn't happen. And so the strategy, like, so zombies are tanks now, and like whenever they get healed, they have a chance to taunt, and so we changed a bunch of things about them so that they don't have any toughness at all. They just take full damage from everything, but they're very easy to heal because they have that thing where they can deal damage through the healing that they receive. Like they
basically it's like we've already tuned up. We tuned up the knight, the samurai. We're just constantly iterating on these things, right? And so the goal is to get all these dudes in now, so that as we're adding more of these final like texture systems, but then also just final enemies, bosses, whatever else, that we already have the whole kit of dudes, so we can just be iterating on them, moment by moment as we go, week by week, so that by the time launch happens, that each one of them is like really dialed the fuck in, right? Where you're like, they each feel very unique. You like them all for different reasons, and everyone's got like a favorite. It's kind of the goal. So I think we're pretty close, honestly, pretty close to that already, which is exciting.
Yeah, there's a few dudes, and there's also a few dudes that I think are good, but they have very bad visual feedback about what they're doing or how they're doing it. And so those are also things where it's like, it's kind of hard to tell whether you're correct about the balance of something if it doesn't feel satisfying to have that dude on your team, even though numerically it's probably fine. And so that's kind of where like the VFX and the polish comes in and stuff like that. All that is important, At the end of the day, it should just be fun. And so that's what we're always optimizing for. So that's all how many dude stuff. July 30th intended release date, so get ready. We'll probably be, as we approach the launch day, we'll be sharing more info about all the new stuff, the new dudes, and we'll have trailers, and stuff will be happening in the coming months. And then as kind of a last thing for this episode, I just wanted to quickly talk about Ludo Kit, which is the developer sort of self-publishing service that we're working on. It's in turbo early access mode. So it's but Adam just got some invites out just like a few days ago.
Just yesterday.
Yesterday.
So it's basically, as I complete features, then I want to basically find people who are in a state with their game projects or publishing cycle that they could use that feature, so that I can then get some more eyeballs on it, have people try stuff, see what assumptions I've made that are bad, that kind of stuff. And so that feature that just got completed is the credits management feature, which is a full top to bottom suite of, like, it's one system, right? But it's one thing to allow you to fully manage your game credits. Because it's a huge pain in the ass to do that. I think we might have talked about this already in an episode.
Yep.
So I won't get into the weeds on it again, but the thing is done. So it gives you everything from being able to add people, alert them. They can request changes to their own credits. Have links that you can create that if you share with somebody, they can add themselves to your credits, so that it's all very easy to manage. And then the final bit was actually exporting your data. So now you can export it. You also have the option when you're doing that of creating subsetted fonts for your credits, so that you can have a font set that is streamlined, so you're not like loading a
giant,
a 20
Chinese,
megabyte Chinese font, so that you can render 3 translators'
name,
names.
Yep.
Yeah. So it has all that stuff is now in there and drafted. So I got the first round of people who are trying it out. Already got some good initial feedback. If that's something you could use in your current state of your project, and you don't mind, trying out experimental software that could end in disaster, then head over to the LudoKit Discord, and there's an announcement in there, so you can just find that. Let me know that you want access, and I can get it to you as long as I haven't hit the threshold. So
slick.
Yep. So just go to ludokit.com. There's a Discord link there, and that's how you can. That's LUDOKIT. So if you're an indie dev who's got a game coming up in the midterm future, then like Adam's saying, there's something that you would find useful, then hop on in there. And as far as features available for early access people, is it just the credits?
It's everything that's in LudoKit. So yeah, it's everything that's in there. But I'm only inviting people if they have credits they want to work on, right? Okay. If that makes sense. Because there's also the promo art manager, and
you're not trying to open the floodgates for everything.
Yeah. Because I want to but this is also just if you are in that Discord, then you'll be around for those announcements of when I want to test a different feature. And so something like the promo art, which already is drafted and already in there's a set of things I know I want to happen to expand that feature set, and I want to do that before I invite people in, like specifically to test that, if that makes sense. So once you're in there, once you have access to it, you have access to all of the stuff that's in there, that whatever state it's in. But right now the focus is on the credits.
But the goal of this right now is feedback. So if you're not planning on or interested in writing up, look, here's what I'm doing, here's stuff I ran into, here's some issues I ran into, then just wait. Because right now we need to get people in who will let us know what the experience is like for them. Yeah. Yep. So check that out if you're interested. That's all the time we have for this week's episode. I would like to thank our producers, Fat Bard and Sampa DaCosta, for putting the podcast together. And thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. To get more involved in the Butterscotch community, just go to podcast.bscotch.net, where we have links to the Discord, a way for you to donate to support the podcast, and links to the archives. And of course, if you haven't yet, head on over to Steam and pick up the How Many Dudes demo and throw it on your wish list and get ready for the July 30th release. Get your $15 ready. Okay. It'll be a good time. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.